Okay, welcome everybody to our session about tooling for the JavaScript era. Oh my God, is that loud? Wow. Happy you're all here. Before we start with the session with the real content, I would like to, or we would like to introduce ourselves.
Okay, hope you can hear me. My name's Clement. My day job is overseeing what goes into the Groovy Grails tool suite, but today I'm here to talk about JavaScript, and it is good to see more people in the audience than we have presenters. The three of us will be presenting at various stages today.
Okay, my name is Martin Lippert. I work for VMware and also for the tooling team together with Andrew and Andy. My main job is working on the Spring tool suite. Yeah, that's me.
My name's Andrew Eisenberg, and I live in Vancouver. I work right next to this guy over here, Andy, and I'm the project lead for Groovy Eclipse, but today, of course, I'll be talking about JavaScript. I'll be doing the demo portion of the talk.
Okay. So, of course, the usual disclaimer at the beginning, so we don't promise anything, and everything that you see is work in progress, and especially for this talk is really some early sneak preview stuff that we've been working on over the past month. So don't take anything for being promised as shipping as a product or whatever. Just to let you know, right? What we are going to show you and going to talk about is first some kind of motivation and where do we come from? Why are we talking today about JavaScript tooling and where does this idea come from? Because you've heard we worked on Groovy Grails, worked on AJDT, Aspect-J, Spring tool suite. Nothing really directly related to JavaScript, so we will quickly discuss why are we doing that. Then we talk about the several prototypes that we did, and we'll show you some demos, of course. So a lot of live stuff to see, which will be, I think, awesome. And in the end, we will discuss with you where we're heading for with this idea, with these sneak previews that we have here at the moment. We are happy to answer questions in between, so whenever you have an idea, a question you would like to discuss, also controversial questions and discussions are very, very welcome. So please feel free to give us a sign, and we're happy to answer questions in between. So we are all doing development tooling over the past years, maybe, I don't know, maybe 5, 10 years now, building developer tools like Spring Tool Suite, Groovy Grails Tool Suite, Aspect-J tooling for Eclipse. We are all doing that based on this very solid and rock-solid foundation of Eclipse, for example. And I think most of our projects are built up on Eclipse technology. We are very familiar with that, and I guess you're all using those kind of tools, right? Can we quickly chat who is using Eclipse, Spring Tool Suite, things like that, some kind of Eclipse-based tooling? Awesome. Who's using IntelliJ, stuff like that? Also awesome. Good. Who's doing JavaScript development? Good. Thanks. Perfect match. So we are building all that on this great rock solid foundation, and we are, to be honest, we are very happy with that, right? It's good solid development tooling. Why should we now take a look at JavaScript or something else? The interesting thing is when we take a look around beyond our borders, what we did in the past, a lot of stuff has changed in the world of application development, right? People are moved away from these heavyweight desktop applications built with a native widget toolkits. They are promoting browser-based applications, web-based applications everywhere, thousands of new technologies, building JavaScript script apps everywhere, different languages, different technologies. A lot of stuff changed, but we still did the development tooling based on our old good foundation, right? But that made us think about reflecting a little bit about the situation. Why did everything around us change so much? And couldn't it be interesting to take a look at what's going on outside of this Eclipse foundation and these more or less, say, heavyweight, big integrated development IDEs, could it be interesting to take a look at those other things that are out there? So what about these kind of browser-based applications? What does cloud have an impact on us or not? Or are we building tools for the cloud? Okay, but maybe what about lightweight tools? What about tools that are running in the cloud itself? Things like that. Those are questions that came to our mind when we think about what's going on there in the world beyond our desktop Eclipse-based IDEs. And the other question that drives me is, when I think about development tools and what's going on there, why is Google able to search the whole web in 10 milliseconds when I go to Google search? And why does my Eclipse IDE takes 1 second when I say, please open this type hierarchy or search for something in my workspace? Why is there such a big difference, right? It sounds strange, and there might be good answers why that is the case, but there was also a driver for us to think a little bit beyond the borders. So what do? We thought maybe we should try to explore this area and think about what might be possible or what might be feasible, what might be interesting. And a good starting point to think beyond your borders is to just turn everything upside down, right? Try to do everything differently just for the purpose of thinking what will happen if you do everything differently. What will happen? We don't know if we achieve somewhere, or maybe not, but let's try to be innovative and try to really do something differently. So we thought about what would happen if you do browser-based development tools. What would happen if you do lightweight, small, very tiny little tools instead of these big integrated development environments? What would happen then? What would happen if you do development tools that are hosted in the cloud? Like many people are proposing for business applications, right? Hosted in the cloud, they're scaling indefinitely. What would happen to development tools if you do the same, maybe? So we are asking those questions ourselves. We are trying to do things completely differently just to see what will happen to the development tooling world when we would do that. And just to see what comes out of that. What's come out of that thought, what comes out of that idea, right? And to find some answers to those questions, we decided not to start implementing something that is completely different from everything that we've seen before for 5 years, and then after 5 years finding out, oh my God, this browser-based stuff was a shitty idea, we throw everything away, right? We like feedback, we like early feedback, we like to learn fast, we like to learn quickly what could work, what could not work, what is interesting, what is maybe a very good way to go. And to get that feedback early, we did some non-coding work, so we talked to a lot of people about those ideas. We asked a lot of questions. We scribbled stuff on the whiteboard and on with the Photoshop or whatever to explore ideas in this space. And we also did some coding work, doing some prototyping, early, small, tiny little things, trying that out. And we are also always trying to ship things early. So it's better to ship something early, some small, tiny little thing, get feedback about that. And that's what we did and what we like to do, especially when we are exploring these new areas. While doing that and thinking about turning everything upside down, we need to do, or we would like to explore browser-based tooling. What is the best target to focus on first? Maybe is it we should try to move the complete Eclipse thing into the browser or things like that and do Java development in the browser. Maybe it's not really a good fit and would also not mean turning everything upside down, right? If you just continue with the old stuff. So we thought JavaScript is a good target. JavaScript is the natural choice when you think about browser-based apps doing stuff for the browser, inside the browser. It's good to think, JavaScript's a natural choice, right? And JavaScript gains a lot of popularity these days. A lot of big, really awesome applications are built out of JavaScript these days. It's no longer this kind of toy little thing doing some fancy stuff on the website. It is really useful for building server-side applications, for building big client-side, really serious applications out of JavaScript. I know there are a lot of JavaScript dialects out there, so CoffeeScript, TypeScript, newly announced, other JavaScript dialects, but we thought, oh, maybe just focus on the real, pure JavaScript first. And that's mostly the reason why we chose JavaScript as target, as a first target for our ideas to explore new areas. And based on our questions and our prototyping work, based on some ideas that we have, we made some assumptions what we should do. And the first, one of the things that we found out is lightweight beats heavyweight. If you take a look at the JavaScript space especially. So if you talk to a lot of JavaScript developers, they're usually running away when you throw Eclipse onto them as some kind of, oh my God, is that big? Is that heavyweight? It takes 30 seconds to start. What is that for ugly beast? They like small, tiny little things. Small, tiny tools that start up quickly, are easy to use. Do not do everything, not this kind of, oh, this tool does everything that I will ever need in my developer life. It's a small, tiny little tool for one purpose, maybe. And this speed aspect is very essential for that. So it needs to be fast. That's one of the major and biggest feature requests that we got from those people saying it needs to be fast. It needs to start up fast. It needs to respond quickly. That's really essential. On the other side, people also mentioned that the tools that they're using at the moment for JavaScript development, like textmate or VI or things like that, they like those tools a lot, but they're also missing this kind of code comprehension, this kind of content assist, that the editor knows something about the language and knows and helps me a little bit with the language, helps me with navigation, and knows where, oh, this is a function, please navigate me to this place where the function is defined, and things like that. They're really missing that. They need to do that all on themselves. And it will be great to get this kind of feature back for these simple lightweight things, some kind of really good language comprehension. Maybe not only understanding the language that you're using, but also understanding module systems that you're using, like AMD, Require.js, CommonJS. Maybe also understanding frameworks that you're using. Nobody's doing JavaScript, pure JavaScript development anymore. Everybody uses awesome frameworks like AngularJS and then Backbone and then all these 1,000 things, and every day 3 new frameworks are coming up. Having a tool that understands those frameworks would be nice. And of course also these kind of indicating when I'm doing something wrong, right? I mistyped something. It's kind of little red squirreled lines under my arrows tell me, hey, guy, this is not working. This is a module that's not defined. I will not find it. And not just finding that out when you run the system or you run tests. Debugging is also very interesting in the JavaScript space because there are awesome debuggers out there. Everybody knows our Firebug, Chrome DevTools, really good debugger tools. And everybody uses those debugger tools. But what happens if you want to change something, if you want to change your code, change your CSS, change your HTML? Hey, that's supported. That works nicely, right? You can directly change something. You can see the effect directly in the browser, which is great. But then you see, hey, this is awesome. This is great. This is what I want. How to get those changes back to your files, to the thing that got served by your server or whatever. There are workarounds existing for Chrome DevTools, for example. You can just type in code and save that, and that gets saved back to your real file, so you do not lose those changes. But it's still not this. It's still not this feeling like you're getting the same real good coding experience in Chrome DevTools like you would get in a real good code editor, right? It's still different. It's still a different world. And some kind of integration, some kind of connection between these things would also be nice. And talking about integration is maybe not really the right word for that, because most people think that they don't want to get these kind of hugely integrated big IDE that does everything for them and everything is integrated somehow magically. They more like to connect existing tools and still continue to use existing tools that they're using. So connecting to these tools would also be a very nice thing to do, like connecting to GitHub or to Git, or getting some kind of connection to a GIST in GitHub would also be nice. Continuing these upside down, and I mentioned, hey, there is everything is running in the cloud today, right? Everything must be running in the cloud. What if we put everything into the cloud from the developer tooling? What would happen then? First, putting all your resources, all your source code, all your files, putting all that up into the cloud, like putting everything on Dropbox or something like that. That would be awesome, wouldn't it? It would be awesome. You can access all your stuff from everywhere. You can open up the browser and change your files from everywhere, from your iPad on your home. Would be good. On the other side, not all problems would go away. Some new problems would arrive because you need to be connected. You need to be online all the time. When people say, "Hey, I'm doing coding on the train. And I don't have an internet connection everywhere." Maybe today it's easier to get a connection on the plane, but not always, right? I need to be able to code offline, and I have other tools on my machine that should also access those files because I would like to work on those files on my local machine because the other tools are only on my local machine. They're not running in the cloud. They're not running somewhere where my files on my workspace is hosted magically somewhere, right? So good points about cloud-hosted workspace, but also difficulties, interesting difficulties. And moving everything into the cloud would also mean to move up the tooling to the cloud completely. Right? It would also open up interesting possibilities like collaboration and social coding things. Things like you see if you, for example, take a look at a Cloud9 IDE, people who are trying to get really everything into the cloud and letting people using everything, more or less a traditional IDE, using inside the browser. They have some nice features about social coding, working collaboratively on the code just by opening up another browser window, right? My colleague is just opening up a browser window. I send him a link, and he's just inside the same workspace, the same environment as I am. It would be nice. And technically, it also sounds a little bit like, oh, running in the cloud will be fantastic because I have these unlimited resources, right? Resources are, of course, unlimited in the cloud because you can scale indefinitely just by clicking a magic button or everything is done automatically. Wouldn't that also be nice for development tools? Yeah, could be. On the other side, my desktop IDE is also, let's say, able to cope with my projects nicely today. Why would I need these 5 million Amazon machines to compile my code? So doesn't always sound like, hey, it's absolutely necessary, but could open up interesting possibilities also aside of this kind of zero installation. A lot of questions, a lot of assumptions, and from those questions and assumptions, we started our next step to do some real prototyping and trying things out lively because that's what we like and that's what we can do and that's what we love to do. And Andy will tell us a little bit more about prototyping. Thanks.
Okay. Thanks, Martin. So Martin's kind of set the scene there. He's given the environment we're in. He talked about some of the assumptions we wanted to test. And the only way to really test them was to get something in front of people, get some feedback from people. But we wanted to do it quickly. And the key thing is to build a prototype very, very quickly, focusing on the key thing you wanted to test. If you have a feature that you really think people want, build a tool, prototype it, get it out there, make them available, collect feedback, and you have to be willing to chuck it in the bin. I mean, if people it turns out people don't want it, it may not be something you can tweak until they do. You may have to start again. So I'm going to take you through a couple of prototypes that we did. So I'm not just going to take you through the ones that worked. I'm going to take you through the ones that didn't work and talk about why that is. So we were pretty keen on doing this cloud workspace, server-side workspace thing. So we wanted to do that in the first prototype. And naturally, I think the natural fit there is a browser-based editing experience. So you connect via your browser to the cloud, and it gives you some kind of editor IDE for that. And we wanted good content assist, because we talked to a lot of people, this lacking feature. I mean, a lot of people coming into JavaScript development have never realized that they haven't used Java. They don't realize content assist is a thing that they can have. So they're used to not having it for JavaScript. But us coming to JavaScript, it was missing, and we were hopeless. We were lost without it. So we wanted to get that feature in there. But we weren't going to be prima donnas about this. We didn't have to build everything from scratch ourselves, or it wasn't good enough. We wanted to reuse technology just to get the prototype built as fast as possible. And we had no preferences here. If you had a COBOL backend that did what we wanted, we would have used it. Luckily, we didn't need a COBOL backend. And so prototype 1, we wanted to test this server-side workspace thing. So something we like the look of was Eclipse Orion. We have a close relationship with the Eclipse Foundation through the Spring Source Tool Suite work we do, the Eclipse-based technology we use. And Eclipse Orion is a project hosted under the Eclipse umbrella. It's not really, it's not a series of plugins that you install into Eclipse. It is an entirely separate thing. It just happens to be hosted on Eclipse. And it is the kind of thing we've been talking about here. It is a client-server thing where there is a server that runs remotely, you connect to it from your browser, and you have a workspace that you can work in. It's called a browser-based open tool integration platform. And that open tool integration platform means it's very extensible. So if you, a bit like Eclipse, if you had a new language you wanted to support in Eclipse Orion, you could write some plugins for Orion in JavaScript and drop them in, and then it would support that new language. And it looked like it would be a suitable base for us. And something they were doing which really gelled with us is that they weren't attempting to build a copy of Eclipse in a browser tab. Because we feel if you're working in your web browser, you want a more webby experience when you're doing your editing. Now, don't ask me to define that, because I haven't fully defined that term yet. But we feel having just the full IDE there isn't quite the right fit. So we took Eclipse Orion and we deployed it internally in VMware for some groups to try out. We added a couple of things that you can't get in standard Orion. Orion has some very crude content assist. It does a very basic parse of the file. It only offers some local stuff to it, so where your cursor's based, it's not doing cross-file or anything. We added some features beyond that. We also were trying to address this problem of you wanting to run other commands than the ones they built UI for. Because at the moment, the only way to interact with your server-side workspace is if they built UI for a command, you could use it. But if you had a new command and they hadn't built UI, there was nothing you could do. So we took a command line console that's written in JavaScript called gcli, and we integrated that into the prototype. So and we put VMC push in there so you could do some integration with Cloud Foundry. There was no UI there. You open this command line console and you could do VMC operations. So we put it out there and held our breath. We'd written wiki pages, tutorials, there were videos on how to use it, and nothing happened. Nobody tried it. Nobody really wanted to use it, which was interesting to us. I think there were a few reasons for that. I mean, developers are busy people. We know that. We've all got lots of things to do. But you often find if there is something that tweaks their interest, they'll find time to try it out. And clearly what we were building did not tweak their interest, or the cost that they were having to pay, they didn't want to pay that cost in order for the benefits they were going to get. So we offered some nice code assist, but they weren't willing to pay the price of sacrificing their code from their machine and putting it up in the cloud. Developers, I count myself among them. I like to keep my code close to me, and giving it up to the cloud was just a step too far at the moment. So they would have had to effectively upload it in some way and then work on it over there, and they just weren't willing to do that. So RM-RF, prototype 1, we gave up with that. And even though nobody used it, we learned something from that. We learned that building what we thought people wanted was maybe not the way to go. And in going through extending Orion, we'd been doing some JavaScript development ourselves, and it was horrible. We are Java guys. JavaScript, it's not the perfect language. I hate to be the one to break it to you, but it's very difficult to work with, especially if you come from Java land. And we were having a hell of a time doing development ourselves. So we thought, well, okay, let's focus on things that we would use, things that would benefit us, and maybe in some crazy world, we are actually like all the other developers in the world. So if we build something that can help our productivity, it can help other people's productivity. But we still felt there was something in this remote workspace story. So could we craft something that today you could use locally on your system, like installing some other product, but someday you could choose to push the server component remote? So we decided to embrace that. Anyone familiar with WaveMaker, they have a similar kind of approach, where you use your browser to connect to the server, but the server's running locally, and it's serving files from a local workspace on your disk. So that's what we wanted to do in Prototype 2. And then sometime later, if people like the tool and they wanted to set it up like this, you could just push the server remotely and have your files on another system. But we knew we had to keep the adoption barrier low. We'd already seen that just moving files from here to the cloud, they didn't want to pay that price. So we didn't want to have a high adoption barrier for this locally based tool. We knew we'd have to get them to download something and run it. We hoped they would at least do that. So what we're going to use technology-wise to build this little thing, we could use Orion. Orion does have this locally deployable mode where you can host the server locally and connect to it. But we'd been using Orion to do the extensions for Orion in the Prototype 1. And it was just not as snappy and fast as we wanted. Some of the UI interactions weren't quite what we wanted. As one example, the navigator pane for browsing around the file system was a separate page to the editor for looking at the file. So if you ever wanted to switch between files, you had to wait for a page reload while you went to the list of files, then wait for a page reload while you went to the new file. And that doesn't meet our needs of being fast and getting around the code fast, which is something we want. We want that VI textmate experience where you can get around things quickly. And the server's a bit heavy. It has stuff in it that we didn't need if we were running in local mode. I talked before about the only way you could run in Orion, the only way you could run server-side commands is if they built UI for those commands. And so they have built a whole UI for Git. If you're running in local mode, you don't need another UI for Git. You've already got Git command line, you've got GitX, whatever you're using, you're happy with. So we didn't need that piece of Orion. Orion also had multi-user setup, so you can, when you connect to Orion, you log in and that you get your own personal workspace. You don't need that on your local system. That's another piece of Orion we don't need. If I had to start up VI and log into it before I can edit a file, I wouldn't be using your editor. But there was one piece we loved. We loved the Eclipse Orion code editor. We're a bit biased, but the editor component, it's written in JavaScript. It gives you that very familiar Eclipse experience if you've used STS. So all the key bindings work, except where they clash with the browser key bindings, they need changing. But if you're used to the squiggly lines appearing and the red markers, warning markers, that's all a very familiar experience. So we thought, we want that component, we're just going to use a different back end with it, if we can. And again, focus for Prototype 2 was speed. It's got to be fast to start. You can't wait. You can't even wait a second. It's got to be up. And it's got to be fast when you use it. There's no control space, go for a cup of coffee, come back and select something. But some of the things we picked up in working with Orion, we knew we also wanted to pull across. Things like the JS lint stuff. We were finding that invaluable as being new users of JavaScript. And we continued with this focus on content assist driven around module system comprehension. So we wanted to understand if you're using AMD, require.js, common.js, we wanted to have a content assist story around those things. So that you'll see the title of the slide has changed from Prototype 2 to Scripted. And you may have seen Scripted last night. Adrian showed it in the keynote. Prototype 2 is what we are now calling the Scripted editor. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about the architecture for it and some of the features of it you can see, and then Andrew's going to give us a demo of it. So what did we do? On the client side, we did what we planned. We took the Eclipse editor and pulled it out. That wasn't as easy as it should have been. Unlike CodeMirror or ACE, which have many consumers in other projects, not many people are consuming the editor of Orion as a standalone project at the moment. And we pulled it, and some baggage came with it that we didn't want. But also, we wanted to pull some other features. We wanted to pull the editor with the JS lint support and with the red and yellow squiggly support, which is a separate feature. And it turns out, if you pull out these features and then try and recompose them in your app, unless you recompose them in exactly the same order that Orion does, they don't work. And that's because Orion's never had other consumers of those components. So we are working with, I should have said we are working with the Orion team on this. It's not like we've done this in secret, still stolen their code. We are working with those guys, and where we can, we're helping them improve their editor. So we pulled out the editor, and it's not like we're going to cut and run with that. We've pulled it out, and we're going to pull it out again. I mean, they've recently added code wrapping, line wrapping, and we want that kind of feature, so we're going to keep pulling revs of that. We also pulled out some features like dialogues that we wanted to use in our scripted editor, and unfortunately they pulled Dojo with them, and I'm not a great fan of Dojo. So we have that in the system at the moment, but I'm hoping we can move away from that. And then in the mix, we have an inferencing engine that we built. It was in prototype 1 in a basic form, but now it's been enhanced for prototype 2. And on the client side, that's built around, I mean, for inferencing, we need to understand code, and so we need to parse code, and we're using the Esprima JavaScript parser for that. I don't know if anyone's familiar with that. It's a fast, open source JavaScript parser. But the standard version you can get on GitHub is not recoverable, which means if you have any errors in your code, you'll get an error marker, but you'll get no AST. And what you need in an editor tool is a recoverable parser, because typically the code is open in the editor because the developer's working on it, which means it's a work in progress, which means it may not be in a stable state at the point you need to parse it. For example, if he's typed foo dot control space, that foo dot may have broken that file, and you need a recoverable parser that can say, okay, I've hit foo dot, but I can still give you an AST for the rest of the file and report an error on the foo dot piece. We need that kind of technology. We'd like to contribute that back to Esprima, but it's difficult. They've got a very clear focus on speed, and making a parser recoverable adds overhead. It adds overhead in terms of size, which is very important for JavaScript components that are being downloaded across to your client. And also, although we try to avoid it, it kind of adds some overhead to parsing. So even if you're parsing a good file, sometimes, because you need to be recoverable, you have to say, mark recovery points whilst you're parsing to recover to. And you have to mark those points even if you don't know if the file's good or bad. So we're working with those guys. I'm hoping we can get some changes in, because I don't really want to maintain a fork for that. And alongside the recoverable parser, we've got dependency analysis library that we've built. It can run client or server side. I've lumped it here under inferencing, so we can transitively discover dependencies. We understand define blocks if you're using require, things like that. Then on the server side, we had some choices. I mean, we decided not to go with the Orion-based OSGI server, and we decided to go full-on JavaScript end-to-end. I mean, the tool we're building is for working on JavaScript. Why not enable it so we can use it on developing scripted itself by going for a full JavaScript end-to-end solution? And the natural fit there, of course, is Node. And so we have a very small Node server in scripted that's used to do two things. It's used to serve the client code, the HTML and JS that makes up the editor, and it's also used to answer requests from the client. And you can imagine the kind of requests the client's going to say, give me the contents of this file, please save this file, please search for this string, please tell me about the transitive dependencies of this file. And these requests are answered. We use different technologies for some of them depending on the client experience we want. So some of them are straight XHR requests. Some of them are using WebSockets because we don't want to hang the client and we want to give that smooth, fast experience. And this is a strange one, restarting on each editor launch. Originally, we were restarting Node every time we restarted the editor because the server code was changing all the time. We always wanted to be running with the latest version. So we thought we need to do this. But it turned out Node started so fast that this wasn't a problem. This was almost a feature. So at the moment, if you download scripted and try it, I've got some URLs in here where you can get it. At the moment, it still starts Node every time. And you'll see how fast that is in the demo. Now, that only works at the moment because the process is stateless. Our server doesn't have any state. We have a fast editor. We can go even faster if we start caching and things, but at the moment, we don't need to. Sometime down the line, I can see it becoming stateful, so it's going to become a long-running process. So opening the editor will start Node if it's not there, otherwise it will just connect to it. So prototype 2, scripted, we put it out there. Same place as we put Orion. We put out the same wikis and movies and please try this. And we got a lot more positive feedback. People actually tried this. If you think about what the requirements are, well, the only requirement is you have Node installed. And for JS hackers, that isn't a big deal. They typically have it already. So that you can download it and very easily just stick it on your path and then just run scripted and you can open the editor. So we got such good feedback that we decided to open source it to a wider audience so more people could throw rocks at it. So that's why it's on GitHub. So the URL's there. I wrote a blog last week on blog.springsource.org where you can go and read some more and get links to it, and there's a movie on how to set it up for yourself. So just before we see the demo, I want to make sure you look out for certain things in what Andrew shows. So look at it. I say look at the speed. Am I cursing the demo here or not? It should be fast. Unless this projector system is interfering, it will be fast. And if it's not fast, it's a projector system. So, and it's fast to start up and fast during use as well. There's no hanging around while it does something. And you'll see we've done a lot around code awareness. We've got that JS-Lint integration, the module system awareness. Something I haven't even touched on is JS comprehension, and Andrew will show you how that makes the thing even smarter. Now, we couldn't build the perfect tool that everyone in the world would like. We'd probably get the font size wrong or something in the editor. So we have very basic editor configuration that you'll be able to see. And we have a basic navigator. Now, originally we added the navigator pane because people expect a navigator pane, but partially we added it because we had no other way to get around the code. We didn't have an inferencing engine that was working. We didn't have a dialog for jumping between the files. So the only way to get around the system was using navigator. We assumed once we'd built up the inferencing engine that you would just click on things and it would jump to the right file. And so we could delete the navigator. But it turns out people still like it. People still use it. So it's basic at the moment, but I think we're going to keep it and beef it up a bit. And I've got a throwaway line about side panel there. I mean, you'll see it briefly in the demo, but I will definitely talk about it more and a little bit about where we're heading after the demo. So with that, I'll hand over to Andrew, who's going to show it in action.
Thanks, Andy. So I'm going to start off over here on the command line. This is loud. Okay, starting on the command line, and to start, this is a very simple Node app that I have right here, and I just type scr app, and this will bring up Chrome, and you can see scripted. It looks like maybe a text editor. On the left, you can see the navigator. This is the current file. Over here is all the text. Over here we have a little breadcrumb, and allows us to, let me go to a different file here. You can see we have syntax highlighting we have very simple syntax highlighting and editing support for HTML files as well, but we are currently focusing on JavaScript. So you can see here our breadcrumb will allow us to navigate around, and we can go back and forward in the history because this is a browser. So over here we have the client side. It's a very simple, silly application where you can talk about some books, people buying books, and display that on the screen. As Andy said, we have JS-Lint support. So we define our globals up here, and if I delete one and save it, you can see that we get an error marker on the side. It tells us that it's not defined. Not defined. Similarly, type here, you get error markers there. Great. And you also notice that we have JS-Lint browser :true. If I get rid of that, we'll get error markers for document because that's no longer, if we're not in a browser space, documents don't work, or you can't reference a document. There are many ways of navigating through things. You can open up the Open File dialog. It's Command-Shift-F for Find File. And you can see it's pretty snappy as it looks through your entire project over here. Oh, there is something that I forgot to mention earlier. If you notice that the project is rooted at the place where I launched scripted. It's not where you launch scripted. It's there's a lightweight concept of a project over here, and if I type LA, you can see that there is a .scripted file. .scripted is the lightweight is kind of a project marker. So when we open up scripted, we walk up the file system until we find a .scripted or a .git file. I'll talk more about the .scripted file later because that's also where the configuration goes. But that is the context of which we use of all of our dependency analysis. And when we do find file, that is how we find things. So Command-Shift-F will open a file, or find file. Command-Shift-L is our search in files, or look for files. So see over here how fast it was just, it's kind of like a little grep. You can search through everything, and you click on it. It searches through everything in our project over here. So one of the idioms that we have in scripted is that when you do open file or any navigation that we do, if you include the, oops, try this one. If you do command, it will open up in a new tab, which kind of makes sense.
Does the up-down button, those arrows work?
Yes, it does. Oops, get rid of that. When you do over here, yes, it does. You see. So I can go up, down, and again, if you do command, you can press enter to open up a new file. If you do command enter, it opens up in a new tab. And if you do shift, it will. If you press down shift when you enter and press enter, it'll open up in the side panel. And Andy's going to talk more about what we can do with the side panel. But for now, it's really just another editor. You can click the button over here, and you can switch around. You could close the side panel by clicking the X over there. You can see that we're very key binding heavy here, and we try as much as possible to be similar to Eclipse key bindings, like Control L will navigate to a new line, and things like that. But if you want to see all the key bindings there, you press that question mark and you see everything that you can do. So when you get used to it, it's very fast to navigate around. And we're trying to be more like the VI kind of editors rather than the editors with these big heavy toolbars that obstruct half the screen. So one more thing we have is if you do Command-Shift-O, you can see, oh, this is actually a very good file for that. Let's do this one over here. Command-Shift-O will open up an outline. And like the other ones, you could type to filter down, and you can navigate to that particular item down here. So that's a little bit about the navigation. I'm going to dive a bit deeper into our code analysis and what we can do here. So you can see first that you can hover over a person. You can see that you get a little description of its type. You can see that this thing over here is a constructor that takes a first, last, and a phone number and returns a person. And over here we hover over a full name. It is a function that takes no arguments and returns a string. Similarly, users is an array. So that's pretty easy. So I can type something like new person, and I can tab through here and type some information. So you get linked editing, which if you're using Eclipse, you're familiar with as well. But notice what we have up here. We have this JS doc over here that specifies the types of all the different parameters. And this allows us to know that person, the first is a string, last is also a string, and phone is a number. And again, because we are using some type inferencing here, we're able to use a little bit of, it's a very simple flow analysis that says that whenever we do an equals, we know that this dot phone is a number as well. So we can go back to the new person. And you can see over here we get content assist as well. We can see that we have a phone number. And over here we can first, last, and phone. Again, it is inferring the type based on the information that was in the constructor. Now you can see how content assist works right now. See, there are these these strange bars throughout there. What is going on here is that we are grouping things that are coming from the same scope together. So first, last, and phone are from the actual object. Full name is from its prototype, and then over that we have object. So these other things are just methods that are coming, properties and methods from object. And if you go over here, you see a whole bunch of other stuff. Let me see that. See, there's a whole lot of other stuff down there. These are the non-inferred types. So this is pretty much everything else that we have inferred that is somewhere inside of your project that you may or may not care about. It's over here. And the reason why we do this is there's a lot of times that JavaScript just doesn't, you just can't figure out what's going on here. So we try to do the best we can up here, but if we can't, then you can just filter out things and you can see everything else, even if it doesn't make any sense at all. But we're trying to keep a very big distinction between what is really inferred and what's not. Okay, so that's that. Now, we talked earlier about, or Andy talked earlier about script module awareness. This is the client side right now, so we are using AMD to define a couple of modules, and this main.js uses the two modules we just defined, the users and the bookstore. So if you hover over here on M-users, the module for the users, you can see that we've picked out what the functions are. So we can, if you press F8, you can navigate. F8 is the navigation key. We tried to do F3, but that is find in Chrome, so we had to choose a different one. So we couldn't do what Eclipse does. F8 does navigation. You can see that we navigated back to the original, to the module itself. But we can do other things too. So again, M-users has a get user count, so you can press F8, or we can press Shift F8 and open the declaration in the side panel over here. And similarly, we can do the same thing on M bookstore, by book. We can do Control F8 and open up in a new tab. But we also recognize when modules don't exist. So if I erase that E, you can see now we have an error bar here. So this has been quite helpful for me when I'm editing things and I just move things around and I forget that I do that. So it's quite helpful. We also understand Node. So this is the server side of what, this is the server side over here. It's a very simple flat file server, static file server. Not particularly interesting except for the fact that we know some things about this. So we're using node static over here. Now again, we understand require. And if you wanted to, you can navigate into node static itself. You can see there are a lot of error markers here because node static they're not running JSLint here. But you can still navigate here. And if you hover over stat, you can see a whole bunch of stuff that we've inferred by parsing the dependencies of this particular file. So over here we generate a server. You hover over a file. You can see that we know the type of file. Well, we're using a bit of JS doc over here also. But if we do, you can see that we get some information about what the allowed properties are. And down here we're using HTTP. Again, we can parse the built-in node module so we know exactly what's available and what isn't. And we use a bit of JSDoc here so we also know what rec and res are, request and response. So we get all the content assist that you would expect, and then all the other junk in case you need it. So, but hopefully this is all that you need. So, yeah, and again, same JS. Oh, we don't actually use define here. That's right. We do use require though. Same JS doc support. So if you notice something, we use require both in the client and in the server. So it can get kind of annoying to have to specify global variables in every single file that all the globals in every single JS doc and every single JS file. So what you can do is open up the .scripted file that I talked about earlier, and you can add some configuration here. Now I'm not very good at typing when I talk, so I copied it all out. So these are some very simple JS lint configurations. This says that options are going to be, we're going to say the browser is true, and we're going to set require and console and foo as global variables in all of our modules. So now this means that now this means that we can get rid of this. Oops, I didn't do require. What? Oh, right. I'm sorry, I forgot about that. After you make a change to your .scripted file, you need to reload. So, and then then the error markers go away. And now because we specified that browser is true, we get all the browser-aware content assists. So if I do window, we get window. We can do document. Oops. And I get all the stuff that you possibly could want that's available inside of a browser. That's quite useful, I think. So there's quite a bit of other configuration you can add to your .scripted file. There's some UI configuration. So let me just... You can set the font size, you can set the font style if you want to, but let's just do that. Whoa. So you probably don't want to work like this, but you can, there are some UI configurations here, so save that, refresh, it goes away. There'll be a lot more configuration as we move forward with this.
Do you indicate errors on the navigator on the left, which files are in error?
Not yet, because this would require us to go through, at this point, this would require us to go through every single file and search for them. But it's not out of the question. It is something that we need to do. Yeah. Yeah. So the question is about JS doc. If you leave off the JS doc, let me go back to an example here. So one of the hard things to do is figure out what the types of parameters are. So over here, we have the parameter being a text node. So the only way we can figure that out is through this JSDoc command. So if I remove that, it just says that it's an object. It doesn't know what the type is. So there's lots more that you can do in lots more configuration. So let's say now we want to, work with Cloud Foundry. There's some very simple integration we can do. We have things called exec keys that allows you to execute commands when certain keystrokes happen, or execute commands when certain browser events happen. So let's take a look at that right now. So what I have right now is there's an execs part of your configuration, and I have a few keys here. So if I do Alt-Control-Shift-P, or Alt-Control-Shift-N, I'm going to launch a local node server. So let's just focus on that for now. So let's say I want to start playing around with my node. I could just launch this from the command line. And you can see it works. But then let's say I want to make a small change. And every time I make a change to my app, say I want to add an Easter egg or some sort. If I want to add a new way to interact with the server, I have to go back to the command line, kill it, restart it, and then go here. But that's a bit of a pain. However, we could integrate that with the editor. So if I go back to here, I define Alt-Control-Shift-N to be launching the node server. See, there's a command spec over here says that the name is going to be launch node server. The command is going to be node app.js. Timeout is going to be 60,000 seconds. So this basically means let's just keep it running as long as I interact with it. Once a minute, don't kill the command. And also I could define a kill command, which is going to be this kill switch over here. So when I do Alt-Control-Shift-K, it's going to call wget and call kill on the local host, which will kill the server. If you see what I just did over here, it's going to process that exit 0. So again, I have to restart in order for the .scripted folder to be refreshed. And right now you see the node app is running, but if I do Alt-Control-Shift-K, see that it has been aborted because I just killed it. And I can do Alt-Control-Shift-N, and see now the node app is running again. So you might be wondering, where does the output go? How do I know what commands I've just run? At this point, it is honestly a little bit early in the stage, so we just have, you open up your command window over here, and you see that there's an error over there. But you can see that when I do Control-Shift-K will kill it, and Control-Shift-N will restart the server. Now we can do a few more things here. Yeah, we can do a few more things. Let's get rid of this for now. So we can also run commands after save. So every time we save the file, we want to run a save, like we want to maybe build your project, or in this case, we could even push to Cloud Foundry. So I defined a new command over here, Alt-Control-Shift-P, which is push scripted to Cloud Foundry. And the command is vmc push, the name of this app, and make sure this is a timeout, so it's 60 seconds for it to pass. So we should be okay if I am logged in, which I don't actually have my, should I try on the wireless? Yeah, I should be okay with trying on the wireless. Okay, so open up over here, and I don't need to reload because it's already there. So once again, so now let's take a closer look at this. After save, and after save it takes a JSON object, which the first thing over here is a pattern. */*.js. This is an ant-style file pattern, which means that if there's any JavaScript file that gets saved, run the VMC update. So the first thing we do is Alt Control Shift P, and hopefully this will work because I'm hopefully connected to wireless. And you can see that the exec happened. Yep, there it was. So you can see we just pushed to Cloud Foundry, and you guys can all access it at scriptedbooks.cloudfoundry.com. And we could go to our little Easter egg. And we get that. And I click on App, and I could fix it from being something little. And now, when I save it, you can see the command got executed. Takes a second or two. And see, now it's different. So all these commands, you can see it over here. You can see how exec launch node server tells you what the commands are. So this helps you remember what you have put inside of your .scripted file. So that's basically the entire demo that I have, so I'll hand it back to Andy.
Okay, thanks, Andrew. So I hope you saw some of the features I talked about, and I hope you could see how fast it was. I mean, that's with no caching on the server side or any smarts there. It's already pretty fast. You don't get distracted waiting for it to do something. But it is early days with this project. So we're going to talk a little bit now about where we're going with this. It is a prototype we've just put out. We want to focus on even more code awareness. I mean, Andrew showed you some of the stuff we're doing. We want to take that further. We want to support more module systems. Whoever shouts the loudest gets their module system supported. I heard some people shouting curl earlier in the week, so that may be the next one we look at. It's curl understanding of AMD, so we may do some of that. And around the content assist thing, I've been mainly thinking around always-on content assist. So what is that? At the moment, when you're using the editor, you press Control Space because you expect it to suggest something. But there's going to be times when it knows anyway, and you just haven't bothered to press Control Space. So I think IntelliJ has something like this, where it's always suggesting things, and you can just accept those suggestions and move on with your life. You don't have to press Control Space. So we might explore some of that if we can get the inferencing good enough that it's always suggesting the right thing, and you can just select it and move on. And that takes us down a path that I want to explore with Scripted, which is, can we make the editor smart? And by that I mean either showing you things before you ask for them, or showing you things you didn't know you wanted to ask for, but in fact help you in what you're trying to do. Now, I'm not trying to build a Microsoft paperclip here and get in your way. If it gets in the way, we failed. So are you going to see some of those kinds of ideas over the next few slides? And we're going to have some kind of plug-in model there. I mean, you saw very crudely that exec keys allow you to run some random command and we dump some output somewhere. But there's no reason why that key binding couldn't have been bound to a little snippet of JavaScript. And that JavaScript could have maybe taken your selection in the editor, done some work on it, and replaced what was in the editor. Or maybe, because of those nice warning and error markers we have in the editor, maybe you can execute a command that does some kind of JS linting, some kind of code checking for your project, and you can supply new markers to the editor from your plugin, from your bit of JavaScript. So those are the kinds of plugin I'm thinking of. We talked about the side panel briefly in the demo, and you saw that it was showing just a second editor. And we call it a side panel because it's meant to be full of stuff that helps you achieve your main task, which you're working on, in the main editor. Okay? And what we want is to put other stuff there. And that's where the stuff will go that we're going to show you things you've asked for, and also things you haven't asked for, which will probably help you. So they'll start appearing in the side panel, and you'll see some of that in the screenshots I'm going to show you in a minute. But at the same time, we don't want the side panel to be a dumping ground. We're not just going to fill it up and keep on adding stuff. We want a management of that, so it's always relevant content to what you're trying to do. And the last point is we're going to update that UI. I mean, this is kind of our first JavaScript app, so we weren't very smart when we started it, and we're a bit smarter now. So we're going to tidy it up. Longer term goals, some of the things that Martin alluded to. I mean, we were working on JavaScript. Debugging JavaScript is pain. There are many pain points. Chrome DevTools is great, but I don't want to sit down and build a duplicate of Chrome DevTools that integrates with my editor. I feel that's a waste of time. So we want to explore points of integration. Can we reuse their panels and make them appear alongside our editor so you can do your live editing in the same editor you've been using? And we all get into callback hell with JavaScript. You hit a breakpoint. You've no idea how you got there. We want to do some work there to make that nicer. And maybe the holy grail, or something we'd really like to do, is this step into server from client. You can imagine you're in that client, debugging through. You can see the XHR request being built up. You're about to make the call. You press step into. You don't really want to see the implementation of XHR call. You want to see what happens on the server. So step into takes you into the server code. That feels possible. It feels even more possible in a pure JavaScript solution where we've got JavaScript on both ends. So we want to do some of that. Selected tool integration. And this is where we're going to be careful about what we build. We don't want to build this yet another Git UI for you to learn. We want integration where it makes sense. So is there something that Git command line doesn't do very well, but yet you'd like to see in your editor? That's a point of integration that we might build something for. And if I look even further out, if people like this approach of a very lightweight editor that yet has the features of an IDE, so the content assist and fast navigation, if you like that for JavaScript, then why wouldn't you like that for Java? We have a lot of experience of working with the JDT compiler, running compiles, incremental building. We could do Java support in the same way. So that was text on what we're going to do. But something I thought would be a fun thing to show you at the end of this talk is we're finding JavaScript UI development is massively expensive. In Eclipse, there are many ways to do the same thing, but they tend to all look the same. There's only one way to have a certain dialogue, a certain layout of widgets. In JavaScript, it's free-for-all. You can do whatever you want, make it look however you want, and there are far too many options, and they're all expensive to build. So what we've done is we've worked with a user experience expert in VMware, and he draws up things, and we talk about his drawings. That's far cheaper than us building them and then talking about them. And I'm going to show you some now, and I'm not just going to show you the good ones, I'm going to show you the bad ones, and talk about why we threw them away. So this was, I showed you the side, we saw in the demo the side panel we have. We originally thought this would be cool, this looks cool. So we'd have hover editors over the top of the main editor. And the side panel that Andrew showed you was a full editor on a file. But we think there are cases where you just want to see a particular function, so you get a smaller editor that just shows you the function you're interested in. So we looked at doing this kind of thing, but the day one of those opens and it covers up something I'm looking at in the main editor, I'll just go berserk, because we don't want to build an editor where you spend your time trying to manage the layout and move things around just so you can see your code. That would be so annoying. So we decided to move away from this and go for something like the side panel that we've got. I talked about other things going in the side panel. At the bottom on the right, you can see the editor one that we've got going. But the kind of candidates we're talking about that go in there are things like a panel that shows formatted JS doc. Maybe that's useful to you. Maybe you've asked for, it might be JS doc on a function in your system. It may be JS doc on some Dojo thing you're calling. But you can keep it up there and use it and then close it when you're ready. And that's something I want to talk about a bit, is that the side panel is going to have two kinds of things in it. It's going to have things you've asked for that you feel will help you, and it's going to have things in it that we think will help you. And the things that you've asked for will persist until you close them. The things we put there will have a shorter lifespan. They'll come and go over time, so they don't clog up the system. You can see a search results there. I mean, Andrew showed you look for, but sometimes you don't just want to go to the first thing. You want to check through all the things, something about each result. So you might be able to do a look and then press pin, and the search results appear in the side panel. You can keep them there while you're busy checking through the results. And then when you finish, you just close it. So there's lots of possibilities here, and maybe this is where the plugin model is also extensible. So if you have something you want to show there, you can just quickly plug in something. I mean, something I could have used the other day was a Markdown preview panel. So if I'm working on Markdown text in the main editor, it'd be great if the side panel could show me a preview of the Markdown. This is the same screenshot, but I'm now talking about the other side of it. So I talked about that navigator, and to me it's a bit basic, and it just shows the hierarchical structure of the code. And there are other ways to think about your code. So we're exploring options for, I think we've got some filters up there. Maybe it's interesting to see what's been changed recently. It's maybe interesting to see what files have been tagged with a certain tag, because maybe there's a feature that cross-cuts your hierarchy, and either you tag them or we auto-tag them in some way. But there's some metadata about some files in your system, and you can select one of the tags, and instead of showing you a hierarchical view, it will show you all the files relevant to that feature. It's all about being able to navigate your code fast. This is a funny one. Obviously, the side panel is going to fill up the more stuff we put in it. Eventually, it's going to be more than a screen full. What do? And we thought this was going to work. We actually built this thing. So you had multiple editors in there, and then you move the mouse over there, and you move the scroll wheel, and then what did it do? We couldn't decide whether it should scroll the editor it was hovering over or the side panel of editors and move those up and down. And whichever one you thought it was going to do, it always did the other one. It was just insane. And the developers just couldn't get on with it. So we had to, I think we've abandoned doing that at the moment. So then we looked at another option of having an overview of the side panel. So you can see on the far right, I've got a list of the windows. But that's sacrificing a lot of valuable screen real estate for an overview thing that doesn't tell you much, other than maybe you've got too much stuff in there that you need a scroll bar. So you can't see the name of the files. You can see which ones are big and small. Is that useful? I don't think so. So I don't think we're going to do that. So this is the one we're kind of looking at the moment, an accordion model. So we keep them around until you close them. But if you're not actively using them right now, they get squashed down to a single line. And we're looking at how small we can make that line, because obviously it's valuable screen real estate. But at least they're there. You can close them, and you can make them bigger if they suddenly become more interesting to you. And that should help with trying to manage this space and make sure it doesn't become a dumping ground for everything. Something I will talk about on this one. I don't know if anyone's seen the light table video that came out a few months ago, but some of the things they're doing have inspired some of the stuff that we want to look at. So it's this idea of bringing things into view that may help you, but you didn't realize to ask for. So those are the kinds of things we want to do in this side panel. Andrew showed you three different key bindings for doing different kinds of search and outline view and searching for things. We're probably going to put that all in one search box, a bit like Spotlight on the Mac. So you just have one box, you type in blah, and it will tell you, well, I know a file's called blah, I can see that text string inside this file, and so they're all grouped together. We're probably going to do something in that space. And then this is the one we've most recently been exploring. This is the Git integration. So I think this is something that I find that Git command line doesn't help me with much. And although there are tools like GitX, I find that it's a new editor to learn, and I kind of want it in my editor that I'm used to every day. So here you see a side panel that is showing us the commit changes over time for this file, and I've selected one, and it's showing me in line where the changes are to this module. And this is the kind of thing I think we could bring into view that you didn't realize you wanted to see. I mean, I had a case fairly recently where a bug came in, I started working on the code, and I was hacking around in a particular place in the code. And after a few hours, I eventually found out that it was a line that was changed a few days before, and I was refixing something that wasn't fixed properly in the first place. And I dug into Bugzilla, and knowing that original bug report would have helped me in what I was trying to do. I could have saved hours. So it doesn't seem beyond comprehension that if we see you hacking around on a certain line, we can be aware that there are Git changes against that line in the last few days. Maybe you don't realize there have been, but we can know that. And we could gently bring the side panel up saying, hey, you might want to look at this because it looks like you're hacking away on the same thing someone else was hacking away the other day. So it's that kind of bringing it into view, not too obtrusively, and saying you might want to, this may make your job easier that you're working on at the moment. And then the last thing I've got on there is a little gimmick along the bottom, that timeline thing. So you see the little white line with the little flicks on it. You can imagine that's very cool for demos. I don't know how much practical use it is, but for demos you can drag that bar along there and see the file change over time as the Git commits are made. I think that would be a very cool demo. So I showed you some of that stuff. It's maybe you've had a violent reaction to some of it and you want to express your rage, if you do, then please take it to the Google group rather than coming to see me now. But maybe it's made you think of some other things that could go in there, things that affect you every day. Is there some side panel contents that could make your life easier? Please get in touch with us and let us know. We have a Google group for scripted, and we have our own issue tracker, although people seem to be ignoring that and raising issues on GitHub directly. We don't mind which one you want to use, whatever's easier. So that's what we wanted to talk about today. Martin talked about why we've gone in this direction, why we're playing in this space. We had some assumptions about what people wanted. It turned out that wasn't what they wanted. But we learned that quickly through prototyping. And the end result is this scripted code editor, which is something we're sharing on GitHub. You can try it, you can like it. If you don't like it, it'd be helpful if you let us know why. If you do like it and want some more features, it'd be great if you let us know. If you want to play around in the code, feel free. It's on GitHub. It's a very young code base, so there's not really a learning curve to get started with it like some of our other projects. Some of the more well-established Eclipse projects, there's quite you need to know a lot before you can do anything. But here, you know a bit of JavaScript, you can go in and start hacking on it straight away. And then I spent a bit of time talking about where we're heading with this, so the kind of features you might see appearing. We're going to make much more use of that side panel and even better content assist. So with that, that's the end of the talk. I will take any questions you might have. Yep. Testing is definitely, the question was about testing. We definitely want to do more with testing. At the moment, we have some very basic unit tests for things like content assist and so on, but we don't have, there's two sides to it. We don't have much of a test framework in place for the UI parts of scripted at the moment, but we desperately need it because we're frightened to refactor anything, because we'll break something. But we also want to make it easy for users to run tests and then, rather than just see the output dumped to some console view, give you feedback into the editor so you can quickly learn about where the failures are, clickable stack traces to take you to places that are causing the failure. So we don't do anything yet, but we know we want to. Okay. Yep. Which API, sorry? So the question was, have we got the HTML5 APIs fully defined for the inferencing?
It is, excuse me. So we have most of them fully defined. I haven't, it's just a matter of me going in and writing it up because we have to put it into a special format. I did workers, XML HTTP request, and a bunch of other things. And it's just a matter of when I have time, I fill it out a little more. I go through the HTML5 spec and fill in a few things here and a few things there. It's a lot of grunt work to do, but it's getting there.
So if there's any particular preference that people want, then just raise a Jira and we'll do that one next.
Yeah, it's not a technical problem at all. It's just I just haven't gotten around to it. If there's something missing.
Or you can give us a pull request that does it.
That would be great.
That's even better.
So I'm sorry, it's a little here. It's a little bit loud. So can you say it one more time?
In your example annotations for strings and number, you had them as the object capitals S, capital T.
Oh. I see what you're talking about. Yes. So the question was about whether or not the capital S versus the lowercase s for the JS doc was relevant for the JS doc for inferencing. Either one works. So you can use the lowercase s or the capital S or the lowercase n or the capital N. I use the semantics of the Google Closure compiler. I think it's actually true that in the actual Closure compiler, it expects lowercase letters, but just for simplicity, I accept both. And you can create any kind of type that the Google Closure compiler recognizes will be tolerated by scripted. However, we don't do, not everything that you can specify is relevant for us. So optional parameters are not really particularly relevant for our type inferencing. But you can do record types, and you can also do union types. But at this point, we're not doing array types. We're not doing parameterized array types. Are not yet recognized by our inferencing engine, but they will be.
Have you considered folding of code?
Code folding?
We actually use, the Orion editor does have code folding in it. We haven't turned that on because it just makes it a little wider with the extra pluses and minuses. I mean, it's there. I kind of made the call not to turn it on because I've never used it in Eclipse. The only thing I ever gets folded is that copyright comment that I'm forced to have in all my files.
Yeah, I personally hate code folding, but maybe we can have that as an option in the .scripted file.
So,
I love it. So.
yeah, I mean, the editor supports it, luckily. I mean, writing that would be a huge chunk of work, but the editor supports it, so.
So we wrote scripted to be the editor that we like, and so we made these decisions that lots of people probably wouldn't like. So raise an issue for that, and that's definitely something we could look at.
Those kind of things, I'm thinking folding in this case specifically, but I noticed that there's a settings in the search bar.
In the screenshots there is a settings, yes, but there's nothing in the panel. That was the UI guy getting a bit carried away and assuming we'd have menus and things. We're finding menus and configuration. I mean, you saw we were configuring everything through a JSON object. That's because we couldn't spare the time to build UI for all this configuration stuff. That may come, but it's not focused right now.
Maybe folding would be one of those things.
It could be, or it might just appear in the .scripted RC file. You might just, in the .scripted file, you just say, there's a setting to turn the navigator off. There could be one to turn on folding. Okay. Any more questions? Yep. Oh yeah, that was not the right thing to do. It was just showing if you wanted to set up global settings across a code base, that's how you do it. But yeah, clearly you wouldn't necessarily do that for those files. Not at the moment. You can't do a subset of files. So the question was about when we turn on those global things, they were affecting not only our front end but also our back end code. And you don't want to turn on something like browser for the back end code. So at the moment we don't support a way to say, this is global, but only for these files, so not quite global. But you can imagine adding patterns in there, the AND patterns that we had for the exec keys as well. Any more questions? Yep.
So like in the table example, have you tried having browser up to the side panel to get the real-time feedback when you change the JavaScript and just see the change immediately instead of having that switch panels?
We'd like to do some of that. We just haven't had the time yet. I mean, something I really wanted to do was have a side panel that followed the selection around in the main editor. So rather than as you move the cursor around, the side panel for the callee function just appears there and tracks around. I think that's really great. But until the inferencing engine is sophisticated enough, it's just going to keep flashing on and on, as we can't quite inference what that is, but we can inference what that is. So it's not quite at that stage yet. But that's the areas I want to go. Yep.
So the question I have is maybe the people that are up there are the same folks that are working on STS?
Could be. Could be.
And so now we have, and you built STS on the framework of Eclipse, which gave you a lot of value add for underpinnings. And what I was listening to is you said that you pulled the editor portion of Orion out, which is also, again, Eclipse-like framework. That's the next web-based version of Eclipse. And I'm kind of wondering the reasons, or what I heard you say was, we kind of threw out a lot of the other stuff
Okay, the question was about ripping up Orion and why did we throw away as much as we did. We wanted to, I mean, I only highlighted a few pieces, but really the Orion server is, it's not that it's OSGI. I don't hate OSGI. It's just heavyweight. It has a lot of plugins there that we don't need, so it has, I can't remember what the search mechanism, it's got leucine indexes that it sets up for things that we didn't want to support. So, and Git was just an example of a components in there that we didn't need because users have Git tools that they're familiar with. And if you added all that up, it added up to a lot of stuff. But the key thing we didn't want to rebuild, which was a lot of work, would have been an editor component written in JavaScript. So that we pulled out, and that didn't come with all the plugin stuff too. We just reused the editor component. And the replacement server we're building, we're not trying to reinvent what was there. We're just implementing a very minimal server to do the minimum operations we need for a very lightweight editor. Yeah.
The reason I mentioned the OSGI because Jurgen had mentioned it in his presentation.
Yep.
Oh, by the way, we're ripping the main piece up. The OSGI gets up in the version of Spring. And it just seemed like I was wondering if there were things that were...
No, please don't take it as a judgment on OSGI. No, it was just that I think the server's around 50 meg, and we had 50 meg of Java code with a Jetty thing running that it wasn't instantaneous to start, and we could replace that with 100 lines of node that starts in less than 200 milliseconds. So.
But even that has nothing really to do with OSGI, right? So it was just a larger Java-based server that Orion has. It's built on OSGI, but that doesn't really matter to us at the moment. For us, it was this kind of, let's do some really tiny little node-based JavaScript server-side thing. Even if the Orion server would have been something pure Java-based without OSGI, we would have done exactly the same. And while we are working with on the Spring Source tool suite and GrooveGrails tool suite and Spring tool suites, we are still very happy with working on OSGI bundles and doing all those plugins for you, the existing Eclipse stuff. And that will continue. I will not say indefinitely, who knows, but that's nothing that we want to replace with this idea or with this prototype. Definitely not.
Just want to have one more thing. And also, don't get the impression that we are just ripping out Orion pieces and then throwing them away. We've contributed a lot back to that project. All the content assist stuff, the single file content assist stuff, and the JS doc integration is now a part of Orion. And Orion is now looking at using a node backend in addition to their Jetty backend and OSGI backend, so they can do something like our dependency analysis. So we're working closely with them, and it might actually be that Orion moves closer to us and we move closer to them, and a lot of things up in the air right now.
Okay. If you got any more questions, we're around. Just come and grab us if you want to talk about scripted. Thank you.